free to have them in this room. But otherwise, I would suggest that you just step out if you have a conversation or have something. That way it doesn't disrupt people listening in. It also means that the presenter doesn't have to repeat your questions, so there is a good thing to that. Wow, it became quiet all of a sudden. That's all I have to do to say. I don't have to tell you anything else. Feel free to have lunch. See, State Charter School Board meeting is this Thursday. We start at 10. The State Board of Education meetings were last Thursday and Friday. We were quite a bit involved, but I don't think that there's anything really that I know of that are super big relevance to you right now. I think you probably just got a legislative update for those that were here for the association meeting. If you have any questions about upcoming legislation, please feel free to come talk to me, pull me aside, but otherwise I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through that. There's a number of bills that you may be applauding, and there's a number of bills that you may be booing. If you can, keep track of those that are important to you, and do have your voice be heard. Legislators really truly do listen to schools. Often listen to you guys more than they'll listen to us. So have your voices heard on top of everything else that you do. So I'm going to turn the time over to Marie. She has, oh yes, I forgot. We love to come and visit you and your boards. We really do. Marie and I have been to a number of schools now where we have presented some training to the boards. It takes what, about 20 minutes, half hour?
20 to 30.
Yeah, 20 to 30 minutes. It's either Marie or myself, and one goes to hang out. But it also gives us a chance to get to know your board and for your board to get to know us. The presentation is really divided up into two things. Fast. But the first half of it is to introduce who is the State Charter School Board. Who are we as an authorizer? Who are our board members? Who are our staff? In fact, I think you're going to be introducing our board members or give you a little tweak of that. Then the second part is what do we expect from boards? What are we looking for in how boards operate? And it's just such a high level, quick overview, but it's a start to be able to help boards because they're all volunteers. They're doing this because they love your schools, and so we just want to help them in that job. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marie for some additional announcements and things.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to be right here by the computer for a minute. One of the first things that we wanted to show today was our website, and that it has some resources on it. Back when I was a director, I never really ever went to this website and didn't realize how helpful it was. And now working here, I find myself directing people to the website quite often. So I just kind of wanted to walk through it real quick. So up here at the top, you've got About. That gives you a place to review the mission and vision of the State Charter School Board, the contact information, the place where you can also find the contact information for the staff, as well as if you have a concern or a complaint or something you would like us to look into more closely, that's right here. Those can be anonymous, so just kind of a good spot to know about. Under our board, that's where you'll find the schedule of the meetings, the minutes from our board meetings, who our board members are, the policies and procedures of the State Charter School Board, as well as proposed policies. Reports has a lot of more historical type data. There you can find like our annual reports that we have, data on our charter schools. Under trainings, it's got a lot of information here. It has the link to charter director meetings. That's where we are today. It has GBOT trainings, finance, mentoring, regional seminars, new applicant trainings, the safety roundtable, as well as a vision screening training. So a lot of good information there. The ones that we use most often though would be these last three on the end. So we have the Start a Charter School. So if you or someone you know is interested in what that process looks like, this has resources and training specifically about starting a charter. Running a charter is probably where you're going to spend most of your time. It has information here about how to update your charter. If you find that you're going along and you recognize you're out of compliance in a certain area, that's totally normal. And especially for some of our schools that are 15, 20 years old, we're finding that practices change over time and that things that were in your charter agreements at one point may not be relevant anymore. So this is a really good place to go to get some information about how to update that charter and keep yourselves in compliance. It also has a link for amendment requests, whether you're wanting to change some specific things, add some additional grades, add additional students. If you're looking at a replication or a satellite, this is where you can find the applications for that. There is information here about our school oversight model. Again, charter director meetings, there's a link there. And then we've got these form and reporting guides, resource guides, guidance and procedure type documents, as well as funding, legislation and regulation, and newsletters that are all archived here. So a lot of really great places to look if you're not sure, what is the requirement on this, or where can I get more information here? This is a great place to start. And if there's something that you need information on that you reach out to and we find it's not on there, we'll usually prepare something and get it added later on. So you're really helping each other in the long run by using these resources. The last one is attend a charter school. This can be a good one to share with your parents, with your community. Just has information about finding and attending local charter schools. Questions, comments on the website? Do my Vanna White impression there. All right, well, we'll keep going then. As far as announcements, our next directors meeting is Monday, March 9th, so make sure that's in your calendar. Our next charter seminar with Ed Directions will be March 18th, and that's going to be at Odyssey Academy, or Odyssey Charter School. So those have been really great. This will be the last one of this school year, so we hope that you'll be able to join us for some of those evidence-based instructional practices, and I know those who've come before have found them to be really insightful. We do have Ed Directions coming next month to speak about the Odyssey training that they're doing. And then hopefully you also got the email last week. Our cohort opt-in is happening right now. Again, those are all optional, but we would love to have you join us. We have in-person and digital cohorts. We will plan to get those started in the next week and a half. So please make sure that if you would like to participate, that you get signed up for that. We also had from Child Nutrition, they sent us and asked us to make an announcement here that if you would like to operate the National School Lunch Program for the upcoming school year, your application that's your intent to apply or intent to participate needs to be submitted by February 15th. So that's a very quick turnaround. So hopefully you've had that on your radar. If you have questions about it, Janalee Smith would be the one to contact in Child Nutrition Programs. Up here it has where you can get the intent to participate forms. If you are already participating, you don't have to go through this process again. This would be for schools that are looking to add the program. Want me to skip ahead or do you want to work it? Okay.
Yeah, if I can have Megan and Steve come up. This is a fun part of this meeting. It is the Employee of the Month. And just putting it in a plug, continue to put in your nominations. It's fun, even though there's more nominations than what we can ever award. It is so much fun to read about all of your staff and the amazing things that they are doing. And this here is Megan Herster. I got it. She was nominated, and I'm going to let Steve talk about her because he, of course, knows her better than I do. But this really caught our eye by just how much Megan does and just how well she does it and how kind she is. So Steve, do you want to go ahead?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So Megan has been on our staff for, I want to say, 5 or 6 years. 5 years. And she started as a math teacher in our middle school and did that for the last 4.5 years. This year she expressed some interest in going back to school, so she's working on a graduate degree in social work, and we've been able to retain her as our sort of part-time student mentor coach. We can't call her a counselor yet, but she's been super helpful in our middle school. But Megan is just a fabulous colleague to work with in our middle school. She's the kind of person who you never have to ask her to do something. She's always coming to you, coming to me, coming to her colleagues with ideas and with plans and a way to execute those plans. And she's someone who kids love to work with. As a teacher, they trust her. The parents 100% have expressed their love and gratitude to Megan for the help that she's provided their kids and to them, and the way she communicates with them about what's going on in her classes and with the kids at school. She's been our Hope Squad advisor. We have a middle school Hope Squad that's been in place for all of those years, and she's been our Hope Squad advisor. She's helped out with our excursions off campus, camping, and I think even today we were running just a little bit late because Megan was with a student helping the student work through some hard things. My favorite memory of Megan was about, this was 3 years ago. We took a group of students down to Goblin Valley on an overnight trip. It was supposed to be 2 nights, and we hit some just really bad wind in Goblin Valley, and worse than normal. It's always windy there, but it was really especially bad, and we had to call it. The tents were blowing over, and we decided we'd come back to Salt Lake, and one of our other colleagues lives over at 9th and 9th in Salt Lake, and we called his wife and said, hey, we're bringing the kids back to your place, and we're going to camp in the backyard. So we showed up about midnight on Saturday night and camped out in the backyard, and the next morning we continued on with our plan, which was to do sunrise yoga in the desert. So we did sunrise yoga in the median between the 2 sides of the street at 9th and 9th, and Megan was out there teaching the kids, leading them through a yoga exercise. She's enthusiastic. She has a ton of energy and good ideas, and her colleagues, parents, kids, we all just love working with her. So it was really exciting for us to hear that she had gotten this award. So that's Megan. She's fabulous, and this is really well deserved. So.
Thank you.
Being able to stand up here and hear all these people say good things about you, but we want to honor Megan Herster of the Wileman School of Discovery for your great work. So here's a certificate and an Amazon gift card. So thank you.
Thank you guys. Pretty special. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our last few announcements. It did come to our attention today that the Midas that you've registered for, hopefully, there's that link in our agenda, that points have not been awarded yet in Midas, so we'll make sure that gets corrected. So if you haven't signed up for this as a course so that you can get those relicensure points as an administrator, that course number is in our agenda. Just make sure you log in, get that, and then we will get points awarded to you. So. Our other part, as we've been talking about increasing our support offerings, remember one of those components was getting to know the State Charter School Board better, as well as the State Charter School Board staff. So for today, what we've got, we're going to do just a quick review and see if you can name the members of the State Charter School Board. And then we will have some videos of them that we'll start sharing next month. And so I would also love, as we go through this, if you have questions or things that you would specifically like to hear from the State Charter School Board about, to let us know. Jenna's going to be taking furious notes in the back so that we can make sure we get those in their videos that we will start using next month. So here's our first board member. Does anyone know who it is? I was gonna bring like chocolates and like throw them at you, and then I forgot. So if you can name them, there's cookies and soda pop for you as a prize. Or maybe a plate of pasta if that's more your thing. Yes, sir. Perfect. This is Kristen Alenkowski, and she is the chair of the State Charter School Board. Who have we got next up here? Okay, if you don't know, we're gonna keep going through this every month. This is Vice Chair Delana Tonks. Vice Chair Tonks. Everyone recognize our next member? Yes, sir.
Dr. Brian Bowles.
Excellent, Dr. Brian Bowles, and he is one of our members. Make sure you get a soda or a cookie for those excellent answers. Who's next up here? Anybody?
Jennifer Smith.
Close. Last name is Smith. First name is Michelle. So this is member Michelle Smith. Excellent. All right, we probably recognize her. She's usually in our directors' meetings. Cindy, yep. Member Cindy Phillips. Anyone on this one? I believe she's one of our newest members.
Not the last name Bassett.
Yep, last name is Bassett. This is Crystal Bassett. Good job.
You win the prize.
He gets all the leftovers. And we have one more. Anybody recognize this one?
My favorite.
Your favorite.
Jim Moss.
Excellent. Jim Moss. Yep. Member Moss. So great job. We'll keep going through this each month until we can name them and get to know a little bit about them. As we were going through, did you have any questions, comments, things that you would like the State Charter School Board to address as we start putting together some videos for you? Okay, well, it's up to me then. You're going to get what you get. Awesome. We do have some of our staff members here today. Some are also working on getting us prepared for board meeting this week. So staff, will you stand up? Let's see if we can do a review of these names too. Who's that wonderful guy on the end? Anybody? That is James. Say hi, James. Awesome. Next to James, we have Jennifer's going to give you all the answers. This is Jenna. Hi, Jenna. Jenna's my assistant and fantastic. Next to Jenna, we have Amber. This is Amber. She does IT for us. Up here in the front, Jennifer. Glad we got that one. Jennifer's the director of the staff of the State Charter School Board. And I am Marie. Yay. Staff, we do have a goofy question for today. So how about today you get to tell them if you were an animal, which animal would you be? James, do you want to start us off?
That would be a Labrador.
A Labrador. Why would you be a Labrador?
Favorite animal is a Labrador.
Excellent. Jenna, which animal would you be?
Probably a horse.
A horse. Why would you be a horse?
They're just strong and powerful.
They're strong and powerful.
My
Excellent.
favorite animal.
I love it. Amber, what animal would you be?
I was leaning toward a dog, and I don't know what kind.
Just any kind of dog.
Yeah, I just like to play and do things outside.
Nice. Have fun. Cool. Jennifer, what kind of animal would you be if you were an animal?
So in the 15 seconds that I've had to think about this, I think I'd choose like an eagle. I feel like flying right now.
Awesome. She's overseeing everything as our eagle eyes. And then if I had to pick an animal, I would probably pick a tiger because I think I'm fierce and ferocious. I don't know if that's true, but. All right. We should have our first presenter, which is Nina Farrell from the Salt Lake Behavioral Health Department, and she's here to talk about mental health resources.
She's coming.
Oh, my word.
I was gonna say, you don't look like a Nina, but
No,
we can
my
go
name's
with it.
Chris, so she's coming right now. She's
Chris, come on
in
up.
the restroom. Yeah, thanks for letting us come.
Absolutely.
So I'll just introduce myself.
Please, go ahead. And
She'll
then
be
we'll
here.
just move forward if you wanna hit the button there.
Okay. So, hi, everybody. I'm Chris Cottrell. I'm the Director of Business Development at Salt Lake Behavioral Health Hospital. We're a 5-story hospital. It's down on 38th South and 7th East. And we have to present today, we're going to talk about just a quick overview of the hospital and focus on our adolescent unit. So I'm going to turn the time over. This is Nina Farrell. So you don't have to look at me, you get to look at Nina. And I don't know, they were just talking about what kind of animal they would be, so you want to start with that.
We would love to hear, Nina. What kind of animal would you be?
A horse. I'm a horse
Nina, I'll pass
person.
these out. I'll do that if you want to start the slideshow. She's like,
Yeah.
press the button.
Okay.
Okay, well, hey everybody, thanks for letting me come in today or us come in today and talk about our programs. Salt Lake Behavioral Health, we're licensed as a 118-bed acute inpatient psychiatric and chemical dependency hospital. And I do want to focus primarily on our adolescent unit, obviously because of the nature of what you folks do. But I do want to give you a bit of an overview of all of our programs because sometimes you can't separate out, the kids from the families. Sometimes the parents and relatives also need sometimes psychiatric care. So I'm going to give you an overview. We opened in 2010, and this is actually our anniversary year. So 10 years. It was originally started by a company called Ascend and then was sold in a couple years later to Universal Health Services. Universal Health Services is one of the largest providers of psychiatric services in the world. They have about 350 different hospitals. And they have 4 or 5 different facilities here in Utah. They do different things. Center for Change does eating disorders and a couple of kids programs and 2 psychiatric hospitals. These are some photos. I just wanted to put some of those in there. We have some advantages in our hospital, and some of the things that we do differently is we do invite individuals to come in and see the hospital, particularly counselors and social workers. If you can share that with your teams, I think it makes a big difference when you're talking to families about the need for inpatient care. Because the neighbors here, they don't know what to expect or what it looks like, and we have a very beautiful hospital, large open areas, lots of windows, blonde wood, very clean, very, very nice. And it's as least psych-like as we can make it and still keep folks safe. And we do have different units, and we'll be talking about those. And of course, the acuity is different on each level. So you'll have some that'll look a little more homey than others, just for safety. That's one of the patient areas in the front, nursing station over here. That's our cafeteria. And all of the staff come down and eat with the patients right in the cafeteria. The food's very good. We have a big salad bar we roll out every day. And over here are a couple of areas where folks can go out and smoke. We do still allow that for ages 21 and over only. Obviously, no nicotine products whatsoever for the kiddos.
So I weighed $130 before I started working there. That's how good the food is.
That's our friendly receptionist, one of them, and safety for the bathrooms. So the service lines that we have a general adult unit, and that's your standard danger to self or others, homicidal or suicidal, 18 and over. And we're a short-term acute hospital. No one stays with us long-term. So you're looking at a stay of about 5 to 7 days-ish. Sometimes a little less, sometimes more, depending upon what folks need. Then we have a high-intensity unit. We call it a PICU, psychiatric intensive care, and that's pretty unusual. So we will take a higher level acuity patient than many of the other hospitals do. So we'll take them in restraints and actively psychotic and aggressive. We have a medical detox unit. Courage to Change is the name for our chemical dependency programs. And we have 3 different levels of care. And we do chemical dependency treatment for the kids as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But we do a full medical detox. Most of the folks that come in are detoxing off alcohol and benzos, because those are your benzodiazepines, like your anxiety meds and sleep meds, because those are the dangerous ones. Those can actually kill you from seizures and heart attacks. So those are the ones that insurance normally pays for. We have a 30-day hospital-based rehab unit, and ASAM is a criteria that is established for the intensity and level of care for folks with chemical dependency issues. So 3.7 is the highest level of intensity and care provided. So it means that it's at a hospital, it has 24-hour nursing, we have a doctor who sees them 6 days a week, very intensive programming from 7 in the morning until 7 at night for both the medical detox and in our chemical dependency unit. We have a specialty in senior addiction medicine. It's a real unique area. No one's really doing that. The adolescent, we'll be talking more about that. And then we also have Strong Hope, which are 2 programs for active duty military soldiers. So these are folks referred from their base for PTSD related to combat trauma and sexual trauma. The women's unit is one of the only ones in the world dedicated strictly to sexual assault trauma. Although we treat quite a bit of it in the men's unit as well. You'd be surprised how much we see of that. Special unit, they stay about four weeks or so. We also have the highest outcome scores in that of any of our programs because there are other military programs throughout our country through UHS, and we have some of the highest outcome scores, so we're very proud of them. And then for outpatient services, we have IOP, which stands for Intensive Outpatient Program, and that's a program that goes 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, and we have that for mental health, for chemical dependency, and for trauma. We don't have an adolescent IOP yet, although Chris and I are very much advocating to get one. So we're hoping in the future we might have that. Okay, so the adolescent unit is designed for youth aged 12 to 17, and we're pretty firm on that. 18-year-olds go on an adult unit with us, and we don't want to take anyone under the age of 11 or under 12. As you can imagine, can be quite a bit difference between an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old, and so to try to treat that on the same unit is problematic. But it is co-ed, male and female. And we have a fantastic new doctor who has joined us from Florida. Her name is Elise Huey. She's a child and adolescent psychiatrist. She's young, she's very hip, and she's very dedicated. So all she does is she's dedicated to that unit alone. She's very actively involved. She sees every patient every day for a full session. That's not always the case in all units. Sometimes they come in, they pull a chart and briefly meet with someone, but that's not how she works. She does very intensive involvement. We have a treatment team meeting every single morning, and we have a lot of family involvement on that unit as well. So these are kind of some examples of some of the things that, the reasons why folks might be seen. So for us, it's not so much the diagnosis as it is the acuity. So when folks come to us, they're a danger to self or others and can't be treated safely at a lower level of care. So very often what you see in the kids will be self-harm, they're cutting, their suicide attempts is pretty common, and occasionally homicidal ideation. They're threatening to kill a sibling, they've seriously hurt someone, severe mood swings and lability that's out of control, they can't go to school, they're not functioning. Sometimes comorbid, we call co-occurring eating disorders is pretty common. We're not an eating disorder medical program. We do have a sister facility called Center for Change down in Orem that treats eating disorders, but it's pretty common in youth to have that. It's just when it gets to the point where someone needs medical interventions like IVs and their electrolytes are out of balance to the point where they almost need hospitalization. That's too medically acute for us. But one of the good things with all of these different presentations is that we have a 24/7 assessment office that's open and it's free. And this is probably the most helpful thing I can share with you folks is that we can be a resource for you. I know sometimes these things, by these things, I mean these behaviors, these crises are brought to our attention through the teachers, through counselors, through parents. And the question is, well, what do I do with this? And we are an option for you. We don't require a prior emergency room clearance to come in. Folks can even walk in. Now, we do encourage that folks have appointments, because that way that they won't have to wait, ideally. And we can kind of give them an idea of what the best times are. Usually mid-morning is a really good time to come in for an assessment, but our office is staffed with fully licensed clinical mental health counselors, and that's all they do is crisis work, and they're very, very good at it. And so we can see someone, we can assess them, we can admit them if need be, or refer them 24 hours, 365. So we would like to be a resource for you. I think we're underutilized sometimes because folks don't know we're there. Their first thought is take them to the ER. And that's with a kid is usually not really necessary unless there's something unusual. We can handle diabetes, we can handle drugs, we can handle all kinds of routine medical. We have a physician on staff as well as all the psychiatrists as well as 24-hour nursing.
So basically, we're an ER for mental health.
Yeah.
That's really what we are. And we're not telling you anything you don't know. I'm sure you see kids blowing up. There's a real crisis right now. To give you an example, Utah Valley Hospital, they're one of a referral source for us. Right now, they're getting 10 adolescents in there a day wanting to self-harm.
Or, yeah, suicide attempts. Yeah.
So they have nowhere to put them. And that's just one hospital. So it gives you an idea when you multiply that by all of the different hospitals in the state. You're seeing it, I'm sure, in your schools. So Salt Lake Behavioral Health Hospital really is it's an unknown gem in the community. So we're just trying to get the word out. I could see us in the next, probably in 2020, even opening an additional adolescent unit because the need is there. There just is a lack of resources.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say
say you did coordinate with health benefits? Like
Do we?
insurance?
Yes.
Yeah. We're contracted with almost all the private insurances, and we do single case agreements with others. We are on overflow status for Salt Lake County Optum, which is Salt Lake County Medicaid for kids. We're in network with the Blue Crosses, the Cignas, the Aetnas. We can do direct admits for Select Health. We get quite a bit of their business. We're their preferred overflow. So when there's like units in their hospitals are full, they call us first. We're very proud of that relationship. But we DMVA, most of them. And one of the ways we can be a benefit too is if you guys call, we'll always check the insurance benefits and run them, because as you know, one plan isn't the same as everybody else's. So that's something that they're happy to do. And they pretty well know all the resources in the community as well. So again, if they come in, our job is to do a level of care screening. Someone comes in, what do they need, where have they been? It's an 11-page, very thorough mental health screening. And so they determine what they need, and then they help match them up with that, whether it's one of our programs, whether it's outpatient, et cetera. We don't do general outpatient, just one-on-one counseling sessions. We use our community partners for that. There's quite a few counseling centers, and they all have different specialties, and we pretty well know what they are. So we can help refer for that. Now, our intensive outpatient, when we do get it going, one of the real benefits of that is we have an amazing outpatient psychiatrist, Dr. Michael Markham, and folks in the IOP are seen for med management within the first week that they're there. Good outpatient psychiatrists are hard to come by, and that's all included in the price of the IOP. So our IOP is
Sorry. I thought you were done.
Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and they have 2 tracks. They have a morning one and an evening. Morning is 10 to 1:15. The evening one is 5 to 8:15. We provide transportation for the daytime IOP as well here in the Valley, and we'll even pick people up at tracks and front runner stations. And those programs go about 4 to 8 weeks, 3 days.
I may have missed it, but do you have programs for kids younger than 12?
We do not. Yeah, we don't. Again, that's
Huge need for that.
Yes, and we brought that information to our administration as a want list of something that is needed in the community.
I
It's
only know of 2 places that,
Katie and Uni, Wasatch Canyons.
And then it takes a while to get in there. Meanwhile, kids are hurt.
so do most charter schools, you'll have to educate me, most charter schools have school counselors too?
But you don't necessarily have the psychologist in the school like the other ones, correct? Okay.
Correct. So for example, we have a social worker, she doesn't do counseling. She can sort of problem solve through a problem, but that's it. She doesn't provide anything else besides let's resolve the argument today or something that happened that day. She doesn't set out.
And that would be something that would be of great benefit to us to help you folks is to figure out who those folks are. Schools are kind of complicated because some have a social worker, some don't, some have a psychologist, some don't, some, to actually get to the people whose problem will land in their office. If there's anything you guys can do to give me a list of who do I actually reach out to schedule the meetings with the social workers or whomever, that would be very, very helpful. And have some of the similar conversations about how you refer insurances and all the stuff that you need to know as well. That would be great. When I was at the Utah, go ahead.
One thing we're concerned about when we make a referral, we have a student who's at risk. It's like we say, hey, you need to go to Salt Lake Behavioral Health. Are we on the hook for the funds that it takes to admit a student if they don't have insurance? Or even if they do, what happens when we make that referral?
Yeah, I want to be careful because it sounds like there may be, because I think what you're referencing is perhaps some of the rules about folks with special needs and if they're on certain plans. Is that what you're referencing? Because other than that, there's no obligation financially. We will screen anyone whether they have insurance or not, and we admit individuals if it's appropriate and we have an available bed whether they have insurance or not.
We run
So-
7 to 10% unfunded at the hospital all the time, just as charity. So you're not going to be on the hook financially. I think really the resource that we provide is to yourselves, to your school counselors, speed dial. Here's the situation, and they're free assessments 24 hours a day. So
And even if they come into us and we don't take their insurance, they're safe because our assessment office is locked. And then what they will do is get them to the place they would need to be. If they have, for example, Salt Lake County Medicaid, we don't take it, we don't have a bed, they stay there until we find them a bed. We're the ones that will call Optum and the insurance companies and get authorization and help facilitate where they need to go. That's all part of what we do. The main thing is that they're safe when they come out. What we do really encourage too is to have you guys call our assessment office yourselves directly, and because we get a lot of good information about what's going on. We also know who referred and can get some background. Sometimes if you hand a brochure and a business card to a parent, they may or may not show up. And it makes it harder for us to work collaboratively. One of the things I'm working on is trying to create better systems to make sure that the folks in the schools also have what they need to continue the care, because they come back, they've had this very acute level of care, they've done great, they come back, and now what? And so if we catch it on the front end that you guys have referred, we have a much better chance of getting you on the releases of information, making sure you get the discharge summary, being able to talk with the parents about making sure you guys are included and what that might look like. Of course, it's always the parents' prerogative. And they're worried. They're very worried about confidentiality and what information is going to be shared. And we can create systems where you guys get what you need to know, but they don't need to know everything personally that's going on in the family. You need to know what's recommended. What does this child need so that they have the best chance of maintaining those gains when they're discharged. And that's where you and I can have a dialogue about. That's why I have to know who makes the referral, who exactly needs that information, how do we get it to them, and what does that need to look like. Again, that could be different in different schools. I just need input from you guys on how to create that. Because I hear that everywhere. Well, the child goes in, I don't know what happened, boom, they're back in the classroom. Now what?
Any other questions that you have?
We also will take a pregnant teen on our inpatient unit, which is pretty unusual. Very comfortable with that. We'll take a pregnant adult as well.
You would like, I would recommend, kind of in closing, if you want to come down, we can take you on a tour. You can see it, touch it, kind of see what's going on, and go through the admissions office and get a really good feel for it, or if one of your, someone else that works at your school. So we're happy to do anything we can to help you.
A couple other things too is we can do telemeetings. So family involvement's really important. So we do a meeting within the first 2 days of admission, and we can do a tele-video conferencing if someone's out of the area or someone's unavailable or maybe someone doesn't drive. And we also have translation services available. We have contracts with quite a few of the out-of-state Medicaids because so many of them are here in the residential programs. There's so many of those here in Utah. So we have a Alaska Medicaid contract, Wyoming, etc. And that won't affect the kids that are in your schools, but just so that you're aware of it. What other needs do you guys see? I know what I was going to say earlier is that when I went to some of the school, the Utah School Counselors Association and the School Psychologists Association conferences, I heard that sometimes the charter schools can have perhaps a bit more of a challenging student population, just because these are folks that maybe are there because mainstreaming in some of the traditional school systems wasn't their cup of tea. And I'm wondering what you guys are feeling about that. What are you seeing? What are some of your challenges in the schools? I won't bite, I promise.
I think one of the biggest challenges we face is finding
Management. Yep.
finding somebody that can actually help them with, in the adolescent age range, there's just not enough psychiatrists, at least in we're looking at. Parents and families are looking at 2-3 month waits when they have this critical need. Can't afford ER to get the immediate help, and it's a Band-Aid fix anyway. It doesn't. And then they're back in the same situation, waiting for that permanent outpatient support.
One of the things that I can help provide that might be of benefit, what I can't speak to is what their wait lists are going to be, but I just finished compiling a list of IOPs and PHPs programs, and most of those include med management. But adolescents, and that's pretty much all over the state. And if you'd like, I can send that out. And then if you guys are aware of a provider or someone else that you're using that's not on my list, I would really appreciate you sharing that with me so it could be as comprehensive as possible. So which area, pardon?
That would be helpful, because I think most of us, we're just disseminating information onto families. We aren't treatment centers. We can handle a quick crisis, but not independent counseling or services like the inpatient.
And again, your best bet, if ideal, is if you can send them to us and we can help make determinations. I kind of call it, it's kind of like an iceberg. Sometimes you don't know, you may see a whole bunch of drama up here, and underneath it's fairly shallow, they're kind of okay. And then there's times where you don't see much of the iceberg, but underneath there's major concerns. That's really for a licensed, crisis counselor to assess. And if we can get our hands on them, it makes us feel a whole lot better than kind of off the cuff making determinations. There's so many family dynamics involved with the kids, as you well know. We kind of have to like to have as complete a picture as we can. So I'll give you that list, but again, if they can get them into us to be assessed, it doesn't cost them any money than that. Yeah.
I have a quick question. So we may have, I'm in the group of elementary, so my 12-year-olds will be graduating in 3 months, right? Don't have services for those young.
We take 12 and over.
Right, yeah. Right. What I'm saying is, my school just deals with kindergarten through 6th grade, so we don't have older than 12. But when there is a crisis, we tend to have a lot of trauma in our students. Would that be something that they could call and maybe get more information, or is it just like, no, we don't deal with it?
They can always call and ask for resources. That's one of the benefits of what we do, because we see so many different individuals from every possible age group. That's a really good place to call and say, hey, I'm looking for a pediatric therapist, I'm looking for whatever, and you can call. There's a little bit of that also on that spreadsheet that I'm going to send out that talks about if they do. And you always want to call, though.
Are there other languages spoken at your services?
We have translation services for all the languages.
Just so you know, to set expectation, the whole state is, it is very limited with that age group, so I don't care who you are, you're gonna have a hard time finding resources for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really bothers me when I hear a lot of the hospitals put them on med-surg floors, little guys, because they don't have a pediatric. It's not appropriate in my. Yeah, it's when you're setting up psychiatric units, and the way our hospital is set up is that there's separate treatment units for each of the groups, and I think that's a real positive because it allows us to have dedicated treatment teams for each one. So we have our own psychiatrist, sometimes we have a mid-level, our own dedicated therapist, etc. Many of the hospitals, they don't have that. They have teams that kind of flex, or they flex the programs back and forth, and ours are really and that's a good thing. But it can make it a little challenging in terms of if you ask them to set up a new unit, you have to be really careful. And there's a couple populations you have to be the most careful with, and one is your geriatric population, and the other one is those little, very, very careful. It's not something you do part way. If you're going to treat pediatric guys, you have to really be on your game. It's a big commitment of resources and specialty psychiatrists. Not off the impossible list, but it's probably going to be down the road a little bit. We have so many referrals for adolescents that's definitely going to be where they put some resources first. We turn away between 50 and 100 adolescents every month. So who would be the person I would follow up with to find out, getting a list of the social workers out and start talking with them?
You're gonna be the eagle or the horse or
The tiger.
Each school does their own. So
Is there any master list of social workers so that I could reach out?
you can send it to the director. And I serve is that?
I think if we get, we can forward to our own counselors, but
Okay. Yeah, if you could send it to me, Marie.
Okay, I can do that. And then we also, just one other point I wanted to make as part of our programming inpatient, in addition to the psychiatrists and the nursing and the therapy, we have a strong expressive therapy department. And so we also include music therapy, art therapy, pet therapy, and we have a full-time yoga instructor. So that's also an integral mindfulness work of what we do. Very intensive programming is something we believe really strongly in. Not all facilities, sometimes they have a tendency to kind of let folks, when they're upset, just kind of chill, and we don't really do that. We encourage active programming and participation. Even in our detox, like if you have someone go through a detox on a medical floor, they literally just sit there. They don't say social worker, they don't do anything to get meds for 5 days. We don't do that. Unless they're so sick they have a doctor's order, then they're in treatment and programming in groups and meeting with clinicians 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They get a really intensive treatment with us for all of our levels of care. So thank you very much for letting us come in. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to me. You guys, let's see, you could get cards at all, or if anybody wants them, I can leave some here. Yeah, perfect. So here's my card. And also, I'm available to do any kind of mental health in-servicing, either me or I have clinicians, so if that's ever of anything of benefit. One of my specialty areas is de-escalation of aggressive behaviors, how to de-escalate issues and problems. So again, if you have a, geez, I wish we could have an in-service on what is Suboxone, what is medicine treatment? Keep hearing about it. What is it? You can always reach out to me. It's totally free. You can come in and teachers or whomever, parents, whatever. So thank you so much for allowing us in.
You want your extras?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We are running about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, which is always wonderful. And our 1:30 presenter is not here yet. So we'll give you a 10-minute restroom break, grab a drink, and we will start as soon as she gets, unless that's her. Are you Cheryl?
Yes.
Welcome.
1:30.
That's why I said we're running about 10 minutes early, so I can give them a quick restroom break if you need a minute. Restroom break for 5 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Stress.
Oh, wait.
So sorry.
No.
Sorry. Oh, you're good. I did. It'll make you stressed.
You make
Oh,
it
because you guys were ahead.
And I yeah, and then.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Bad Mondays,
I
yeah.
was like,
I just came in.
no, you're good. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Oh, you're good. I realized who Jenna is now. But I messaged her, and that isn't you. Isn't it easy? It's just to put stuff. Just yeah.
But I should have.
Okay. That's what I was told directors, right? They describe it, okay.
It would be first to be to know mental.
Would it be helpful if I wanted to get to them? To get to them?
Yeah, no. Offer if people.
Oh, that would be a good idea.
Electronically.
Oh, yeah, that'll be
So you
good.
can just be like,
Yeah, that's you.
that girl's away.
We are never running.
Oh, okay.
So it's like,
Yeah.
all the stuff goes in order or something. It's great.
She does know. I did her.
It'll just pick you up.
Things are going, do you think?
It's Monday.
I was gonna say, every day could be.
Oh, no,
That's,
we're
isn't
great,
it?
or it could be.
my clicker.
Yeah. Sometimes I think
Mine is upstairs.
backwards.
I was caught up until I came to work.
Exactly, that's, you know, today hasn't been that bad. Last week was really.
All the snow.
Changing the culture of school.
Yeah, that's all I would probably do.
We're gonna get.
I can send Jenna upstairs to get it.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd be helpful. Actually, stuck here.
Got a weird job for you.
And then have their.
Well, it doesn't matter, right? You have time. Yeah, because that's not.
Oh, that's weird. Oh, I know.
Ken, how are you?
Yes, that's perfect.
Talk to him. I also talked
Imagine even more than that.
Well, actually, no, when I was seeing the snow totals, we're 9, but it looked like this is terrible.
kind of investors there.
Yeah, we got more than that.
Started out, I was thinking, you know, we might look like if we had. We're predicting like 90 inches over the night. I woke up and there was like 3 inches on the ground. I was like, oh. Once we've already had this month already, so it wasn't that. So I just go back in.
I wouldn't She said something.
3 inches of snow, we had that 5 times already, you know, whatever.
What did she just? Yeah, just barely. But I would, yeah, I would.
Well, it was nice because each other's schools delayed.
Obviously, public.
It's not connected, but like.
Did you want one of these?
Oh, that would be great, thank you.
Got her in the hallway and she handed me a whole stack, so I'm like. I don't know if anybody else needed it.
If you had done.
In one of the rooms.
Since then. Light off.
Cameron said, I just don't have any. I was like, are you sure? Because you weren't in the last one. Had Anna run it.
Or might say something.
It was brand new school. I mean, it had just.
I know.
Actually wasn't too bad.
Some connection,
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
That's okay.
I was surprised at how little they did.
So.
She's down with the clicker again. Over to you.
Okay, great.
I did actually encourage her influences.
The text message. You can. So we want to pair. Be safe and we can mark when you want to target.
Our traditional district.
Yeah, I was.
Andrea. Point.
To New York State.
She's moving on. Oh, she lives in Salt Lake. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay, I know.
Hoping to. What's that? Or hoping to, or where are you at? I saw you.
All right, well, that I think is about our 5-minute break there. So hopefully we'll stay running a little bit ahead of schedule and get you out of here early today. Our next presenter, this is Cheryl Ellsworth, and she is the USBE Family and Communication Engagement Specialist. And she's here to talk to us today about the Belonging Schools Initiative. So I'll let her go ahead and introduce that. And Jenny is here. Yay, Jenny, welcome.
Yeah, I will.
Go through here, so that's okay.
I will. Okay, so this is good because I know a lot of you. Yes, which is really exciting. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cheryl Ellsworth, and this is one of my amazing colleagues through a fellowship that we've been working on for the past 20 months. Ginny Mayer Glenn. She's with University Neighborhood Partners. You'll share a little bit about what you all do
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So University Neighborhood Partners is a department of the University of Utah. We are the only department that focuses directly on engaging community, but not just engaging, but really having community direct the work that we do. So we are there to help link residents of the west side of Salt Lake along with community organizations and then universities. So it could be students, it could be faculty, it could be departments to support the work that community wants to help reduce education barriers and to impact health and wellness and also community leadership and resident leadership. So those are the areas that we focus on. I report directly to the president of the university so that it's important that you understand that that is intentional to show the importance of community engagement and working with the community as part of the work that the university does. And I for 7 months prior to that, I worked for the Salt Lake School District for 23 years as all of the things. As a paraeducator, a teacher coach, the alternative language services coordinator, an building administrator at Glendale Middle School. Also, recently as a director of family school collaboration.
So she's amazing, pretty much. So, and as the family engagement specialist here at the state, I'm funded through Title I and state initiatives. So I am there to support schools that want to better engage families. Generally, these are schools that are either TSI, CSI, or state turnaround, or schools that have extra Title I funds and they want to use it for meaningful family engagement practices. And then I'm also funded through special education. So for those of you, which all of you probably know, families of students with disabilities get a survey in the 4 largest LEAs, families get the surveys every year, and every other LEA, it's every other year. So those who receive a risk score of a 4 or a 5, I then give TA support on evidence-based strategies of family engagement. So I've worked with some of you in here, whether it's been through special education, state turnaround, TSI, CSI, Title I, but my favorite schools are the ones that are in no improvement and they just want to better engage families because that's the right thing to do. So that's always exciting. And I have worked with some of you in that capacity as well. As you can see, we're going to share with you some findings that we have been working on beginning March 2018, and we kind of finished November of last year, 2019. So for 20 months, we worked on some deep dive family engagement work because when I came into this position, it was like, okay, just go teach people evidence-based strategies, which is fine, but I know maybe Gateway Prep might need something different than Paiute, than Box Elder, than San Juan, than Mana Academy. Like, there's so many communities that I really was like, we need to figure out what our families need in different communities. I just want to point out a few things in relation to families that are important to our work. At the top corner, it's important that we remember that we are a state that has 5 recognized Indigenous communities. And so we'll be talking a little bit about the Indian Placement Program and how that actually has really impacted some of our Indigenous families. Something else to turn to is the Salt Lake City Temple. When we're thinking of the dominant religion in our state, which is based on the family structure as being one of the most important units. This is something, whether or not you're a school leader that's part of that faith or not, recognizing this is a big part of the mentality of our state around the idea of families. I also wanted to turn you to the LGBTQ flag. Salt Lake City has the highest number of same-sex couples who have or have children and have families. So that's important to know that no matter what the family structure looks like in our state, we love kids, we love families, and it's a big part of who we are. This was the team that I worked with in the 20 months, and we're continuing to work with to get this initiative going called the Belonging Schools Initiative, which we'll talk about at the very end. But we've introduced ourselves. Paul, or JD, the next one, he's the Associate Director of Community Centers for Granite School Districts. And then Paul Kuttner, who Jenny is his boss, he is with Education Partnerships. He's the Education Partnership Manager of the University Neighborhood Partners, and he's also a professor at the U as well for family and school collaboration classes. So I think it's important that we have a common definition when we're talking about family engagement. Because I think to some people, they're like, okay, family engagement means families that can volunteer. Family engagement means families that show up to everything or whatever it is. But we are currently using the definition out of the state of Connecticut. Ann Henderson, who has the same position as I do in Connecticut, and Judy Carson went around the state and asked a lot of stakeholders, what does family engagement mean to you? They've come up with family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership among families, educators, and community partners to promote children's learning and development from birth through college and career. Now, this isn't going to be much like interaction we're just presenting to you, but I do want to ask you, is there anything that stands out to you in that definition that we're currently using in our state as well?
Community partnerships to promote children's learning.
Okay.
I think that stands out because it's not just, like you mentioned, the people coming in, or it's not the standard visual things that we see.
Right.
For example, we hold what's called the PIC meeting, Parent Involvement Committee meeting. Spent time in there everywhere from taking apart what benchmark result looks like, middle of year interims or end of year summatives. My families do not speak English, and so when I send things home, they want to know about it. So that to me is part of that community partnership, and understanding what we're asking of their students,
right,
and how they can contribute to that. So I think that that's an area where I think it's more than actually coming in.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Just the emphasis on equal and equitable, that's
Yeah.
intentional, yeah.
It is intentional. I mean, because there are things that are going to be the same, that the fact that we need family engagement, that's the same, right? But it looks and feels, like I was saying, very different in different contexts, and we've got to recognize that. Thank you so much. Also, I want to turn to this framework of effective family engagement. One thing that's an important mindset shift that I've been working with some staff is to recognize that family engagement is grounded in trust. And until we have that trust, the academic partnering really doesn't happen as fast or as well. And so there are some schools, and I've worked with some of you in here who've done things like home visits or academic parent-teacher teams, ways to ground your school in trust before you then move to that collaboration of academic partnering. So in our fellowship, we had to really dive into the history and context of our state. Just so you understand, the other fellows that we were working with as we were going back and forth to Washington, D.C. to present in these past 20 months came from Memphis, Atlanta, Dallas, and Milwaukee. We were the only state approach. The others were district approaches or city approaches. And we all came back and spoke about the history and current context of our state. So I'm gonna, or our communities. And this is more about Utah. First of all, and it's exciting that it's a census year, so we'll have more updated information. But from 2000 to 2010, there was so much growth in our state. For those of you who've lived here for a really long time, I'm sure you can see like the physical changes in our communities and the diversity. But we also have to recognize that there have been groups that have been here from the beginning as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But just to recognize that We have a huge influx of Hispanic, Latino populations, Pacific Islanders, and just that our communities are changing and changing pretty fast. Also in the Wasatch Front metro regions, if we look at Granite School District, is one of the districts that has a high number of students of color, and the percentage is 49%, but if we're looking at Salt Lake, 56%, but if we're looking at Ogden, 57%, right? So we have districts that have higher numbers of students of color, and we have to recognize what that means, especially when our educators don't necessarily always represent our students. Talking a little bit, we had to kind of dive deep into the history of the Indian Placement Program. We had the opportunity to interview families who had been impacted by this program, which essentially took Indigenous children away from their homes on the reservation and put them and placed them with families that were not Indigenous. Some of you in here might have had sisters or brothers when you were growing up that were in your home for a little bit. I want you to recognize when we were talking to families, there were some people who said it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I lost my culture, I lost my community. There were others who said it was the best thing that ever happened to them. We heard a lot of different things, but it was important that we recognize when we're talking about families and trust, we have to understand this is a huge historical context in our state. We took a look at the population of the east and west side of Salt Lake City. As you can see, there's shades of brown. I don't know if that's intentional, but more on the west side here. And for those of you who can't see, that's a percent of population of minorities. And the further west you go, there's more people of color. Something that we're not seeing physically is right here is I-15. So there's a physical division between our families of color and our families that are not of color when we're looking in these areas here that have a higher population of white families. It was interesting when Tennessee and Memphis and Atlanta and Milwaukee, when they all came, everyone had some kind of divide. Some people had a river, some people had railroads, ours happens to be a highway. And if we're looking at the history of redlining, literally there were families that would move into Salt Lake and it was like, you can live here, but you can't live on this side. You can live on the other side, right? We have to understand this is a big part of our history. We can't pretend that this is not real. And then something that's also a shining spot for our state is that we do claim to be very open to refugee families. And so, we also claim through the Utah Compact that we want families to stay together. I want to turn you to the part about families in the Compact. It says strong families are the foundation of successful communities. We oppose policies that unnecessarily separate families. We champion policies that support families and improve the health, education, and well-being of all Utah children. So when we were doing this work in the first, 10 months maybe of our fellowship and understanding our landscape and understanding what's happened historically, we also started to do interviews, empathy interviews, focus groups, and we also did observations. We would go into spaces at schools that were family nights. People didn't know that we were there, and we would see who was invited, who was being engaged, who was being spoken to. So we learned a lot when it came to not only the history of our state in relation to families, but our current context as well. And in that work, we found some findings and some themes that Jenny's going to talk about, which then will bring us to our final project that we'll be working on hopefully throughout, called the Belonging Schools Initiative. Before I turn the time to Jenny, does anyone have any questions about the history or even the current context in relation to family engagement? Anything stick out to you? Any surprises?
Let's say something.
Sure.
When I moved to this state,
Mhm.
I had no understanding of the I-15 divide. It was
Right.
just a highway to me. Coming from the East Coast, at least from I grew up in New Jersey, the question usually was, where are you from? Meaning, where's your family from, not where you live.
Okay.
And so this was interesting because people would say things like, which side, it was very difficult to grasp at first because not knowing that even existed. I'm sure it was all over, but it was
does
just
all over, yeah.
Yeah, but it was just not growing up with it. I think was difficult to kind of understand. And the more you're involved, obviously, I've been here a long time. You do notice that, but
Right.
it's almost unless you're aware of that, it just seems so odd.
Yeah, and I think we have to think about our families, right? Like, we do have higher numbers of indigenous communities in certain spots, right? Because there were reservations, but we also have a higher number of students of color in certain areas. And what does that mean, right? What's exposures do they have? What access do they have to compared to other families? And what families are being engaged? What families are being invited to the table? What programs are at different schools? So thank you for that. Jenny?
Okay, so I want to start with a story, Carla's story. So Carla is a parent in Salt Lake County. Her daughter was going to a high school in Salt Lake County. And she noticed that her daughter wasn't doing her homework. So she said to her daughter, "Why aren't you doing your homework?" And she said, "Because I don't have homework." Which as parents, we all know that just is not true. And so she eventually made an appointment with the administration to try to figure out what was going on. And when she got there, she learned that they were about ready to unenroll her daughter because she had been sloughing and had missed 10 days in a row. She had no idea that was a thing and had not been communicated with, at least in a way that she understood. So and let me say this, so that Carla is Latina, she is an English learner, but her English is very good. She only speaks in English. I rarely hear her, I know her personally, and I rarely hear her speak in Spanish. But so she goes to the appointment and she's upset that she didn't know that this was happening. She was upset to find out that her daughter had been sloughing and lying to her about it, right? As any parent would. I was a parent in that situation, and I was upset when I found out that my daughter was getting on the bus to go to Ames at Cottonwood High and staying on the bus. So, but anyway, we worked through that eventually. She's doing fine now. She's 27. Anyway, so Carla then at that point says, "Well, what can we do to re-engage my daughter? She's doesn't feel connected to school. I'm not sure why. What can we do to re-engage her?" And the answer, and so she brought up some ideas, and they said, "Well, we're afraid that won't work because she doesn't have the academic standing she needs to be involved in whatever it was that she has suggested." So it was a very frustrating experience for her. So this is Carla's quote. "My daughter was being withdrawn from school, and I had no idea that was happening. That was heartbreaking because it made me feel like the school system was failing me. Because when you enrolled your kids to school, they ask for all this information and emergency people to contact if they can't get a hold of you. It is an experience that teaches you a lot of stuff. It teaches you that you are strong, that you have to advocate for your kids, that you could do more. You learn that you are strong when these situations come along. You don't know how strong you are until you fight back." This is a highly engaged parent. And it's kind of a tragic, this experience that she had, because here is somebody who is trusting in this system to do right by her kids, and she didn't get a phone call. Now, did she probably get a robocall as having been both a parent that got lots of robocalls and also an administrator in a school? I'm sure she got a robocall. I'm sure that the system at that school was calling to let her know when her daughter wasn't coming to school and so on and so forth. Whether or not that her daughter figured out how to get into Parent Portal and change the family's phone number. We know that happens. Whether or not that was that the phone, she got the message so many times that eventually she tuned it out, which is what I did. Whether or not, for whatever reason, it was not communicated to her personally. There was not a human being from the school that called her and said, your daughter is at risk of being unenrolled from school. This feeling of having to fight back, I think, is kind of what's important about this story, but also that she felt empowered to fight back. And that had to do partially because she entered into schools, both elementary and middle school, where there was good family engagement going on. And she actually felt like and learned that she did have a voice and that her voice was important and that she had a right to go in and ask about how her kids are doing and to be able to advocate for her child. So this is also an important story about empowerment and agency. So some of our insights. History and current context of inequity have led to a deep lack of trust between families and schools. We can begin to heal and rebuild our webs of relationships so that we have the collective capacity to address root causes. Distrust can be maintained or disrupted through micro interactions that build up to school and district culture. So I think about this one feels especially uncomfortable to me because I think about all of the times that I was standing in the commons area at Glendale Middle School, surrounded by 900 kids and maybe not that many. I don't think we ever had 100% attendance. So we were probably more like 800 kids, let's say, before school started, parents coming in and out and, the 100 other adults in the building. And who did I not notice or dismiss or ignore just because of all of the responsibilities of an administrator in a building? And so when we think about these micro interactions, having that plaster smile on your face is important. So just remember that even if you don't feel like smiling on that day and being connected to families, it is important. So we broke these down into 3 areas: welcoming and valuing, reciprocal learning, and impact. So welcoming and valuing. The things that make parents feel welcome or unwelcome in schools are relational and turn on relatively small instances of personal interaction with teachers, principals, office staff, nurses, etc. I remember in one of my elementary schools that we actually had a principal at the door, welcoming everybody who came in, asking everybody, if we didn't know your name, ask your name and say, who's your teacher? And are these your parents? Please introduce me to your family. That made you feel important. That made you feel like your principal's interested in you. He cares about you. He wants to know who your parents are and direct yourself directly to your parents. That makes them feel like, hey, you are welcome here anytime. My kids went to the open classroom, they went to the Arts Academy, and they went to Ames. So, and I, as being a regular school employee, I taught at North Star Elementary, Meadowlark Elementary, spent a lot of time at Glendale and Mountain View, so all West Side schools of Salt Lake. I made the conscious decision to place my kids into charter schools because this was something that I felt like, being in a smaller setting, that I did feel like that I had more as a parent, that it was a community that was smaller, where there was more of that kind of connection happening. So I'll just say from the charter perspective that I can appreciate the smaller settings that you have and the intention that you have and the intentional ways of doing school that address this already. Reciprocal learning. So here's the next step, and I think it's so important. Teachers and families benefit when they learn more about each other, including their contexts and roles in supporting students, and want the other person to learn about them as well. But the focus is often on families gaining school knowledge rather than what both can learn from one another. And I really believe that educators are really, really bright, smart people. We know how important good instructional practices are. Like we are doing so many things right. But I don't think we're gonna actually close achievement gaps until we are on that journey with the families of the kids who are the victims of those gaps, I'll just say it that way. That we have much to learn from the community, and we're not really going to get there. And I'm saying this from a lot of years of experience of trying to close achievement gaps. So this is important. We need to learn from our families. I think my goal, this is a teacher effective at family engagement. I think my goal initially is to try and understand the role the parent wants to play in their child's education. I try to understand the role parent sees me in as far as being the educator. Probably the most important goal is to try and create a network of support for the student in the way we can utilize best that teacher, parent, and community have to offer. And then impact. When families see that their advocacy or engagement produces results, room is made for trust, relationship building, collaboration, and empowerment for further engagement. One parent just got crosswalk flags and a crosswalk guard outside of their school from work she had worked on. She's been so excited. I did something at the school for my kids to make it better. So just them knowing that they can do that and going out and doing it is really great to see. I think I would argue that getting crosswalk flags and a crosswalk guard is like a big deal. Like this is no small accomplishment that this parent accomplished. When we think about impact can also be that when the parent went to the school because their child was sick and they asked for the homework, they actually got the homework and walked out of the building with it. So impact can be those small things, impact can be large things. So from all of these findings, and these are just common examples, they were good examples of themes that we had seen did you mention that we interviewed or did focus groups with about 100 families in primarily Salt Lake County, or 100 individuals. So based on all those findings, we came up with these user needs statements, which are back to those 3 areas. Welcoming and valuing. School faculty and staff need to make the goal of welcoming and valuing families as an integrated part of everyone's job, because a sense of unwelcome is developed through everyday personal interactions that carry large meaning. I just think how important the role of a school secretary is. Right? They really are the first person that a family sees typically. When they walk into a building, they're the first person that they talk to. And sometimes, I mean, I know that we had a refugee advocate who had to go to lots of schools, so she was not known very well. And so she may have appeared as just a parent. And she would go into lots of schools and just be absolutely ignored. She would stand in the office for, I don't know, for how long, and just be ignored by school secretaries. It's everybody's job of welcoming and valuing families.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
One of the things, and I think this happens to everyone here in the sense of the charter school, I don't know that, but our admin, the person at the front desk at the door when they come in, is really doing 5, 6, 7, 8 different things at once, right? And it's great to see families come in and visit, and the nice thing at our school is that both of them speak both languages, so it's either one. But they're handling everything from bus changes to the sick room to parents calling, whatever it is. And it really it's such an enormous difference. Awesome experiences because of it. And 1 or 2 parents that feel like they're not happy with the result of what make commitments or complain. And that's like one thing out of a year of constant working with parents are upset for this or whatever. Right. And I think it's such an important role. Sat at the front desk for a little while. I think we.
Right. There's some schools that have teams that do what they call a welcoming walkthrough, where it's kind of like being a secret shopper. And you can go in and you look at the physical space of the building, and you look at the your experience going into the office and so on and so forth, and then do your own evaluation. Like, it doesn't have to be somebody coming in and evaluating. You know, Cheryl's not gonna come and do something like that. But getting a team together in the school, you know, maybe some parents who people don't know well or something, those are some of the thank you. Thanks. The second one, reciprocal learning. Educators and families need opportunities to learn from and about one another, their priorities, their context, their definitions of family-school collaboration in ways that shift power imbalances because there are too many assumptions being made in the absence of knowledge and relationships. So one of the ones that I think of, so like I said, I was an administrator at Glendale Middle School, and the kids at Glendale are bused to East High across town. Right? Thank you. Wow, that was fast. Okay, I'll talk faster. They were bused across town, and there were a lot. And so there's a reputation by the teachers at East High that a lot of parents on the West Side don't care about their kids' education, but those parents can't get there. And those are the parents that I know. You know, in conversations with them, I literally. As an administrator at the elementary school across the parking lot, took a parent who had a child at East High because she and I had a personal relationship. I knew her because of being there. It wasn't like we were friends in another place or another life or anything. But anyway, I drove her to a meeting at East High because she couldn't get there. She didn't have transportation. And once walking into that building, that, you know, that's terrifying as well, to walk into a huge high school, not really understanding how the system works. So, there are assumptions being made in the absence of knowledge and relationships. We make assumptions that parents don't care about their kids' education, and that's just not what's happening. And then impact. Families need to experience engagement of whatever kind having an impact because it demonstrates that schools value families' knowledge and capacity and create space for relationships to form. So we have since then, so like Cheryl said, we did that work at the beginning of the fellowship. And since then, we've piloted a few parent engagement trainings in schools. We've worked with faculty and staff. And so one of the things that we have kind of settled on as a beginning point to sort of our next phase or to the next thing that will happen is what we're calling the Belonging Schools Initiative. Utah schools belong to you. You belong in Utah schools. So this is a message to parents. One is that one of the things that we value in Utah is local control, right? That's important. We want the families who go to our schools to be the ones who are making decisions about our schools. That's built into our law everywhere. It's something we value in Utah. So Utah schools belong to you. Like, those are your buildings. Those are your tax dollars. You belong in Utah schools. You also belong there. You should feel like it is your space. You should feel like that it's your community. And so the vision is that all families in Utah will experience schools as spaces of belonging, spaces where they are welcomed and valued, where they can build relationships and learn with educators, and where their engagement has a positive impact on students and the school. And then this just refers to those three needs areas that we had discussed before. So there are some specific strategies that are coming out of this. And we're working right now trying to identify funds to help us further this work. But one thing that is going to happen no matter what is that we're creating a network, right? I can say this, Cheryl, that there will be a network. So people who are doing, that want to learn more about what others are doing in terms of family engagement, that want to be connected both across Utah but nationally, because we are now connected to other things going on nationally, that there will be a network. And then we're working on some other coaching and other opportunities and trying to get funds for that. So
yeah, because so essentially, what we hope down the road is maybe you're a school that's like, I've tried certain things and we're just not really connecting with families. We're hoping that we can start piloting schools to become belonging schools. Belonging schools, initiative schools. That's a lot of words. We're trying to figure out how this is gonna work, but in the funds and all of those kinds of things, we need to first pilot and figure out, is this working? What are some of the basic things schools need to be doing? Do they have to be schools that are already doing home visits or have already done evidence-based practices before they become a Belonging Schools Initiative school? We also recognize that because there's so many great practices happening around our state, there are people who are like, I just want to see what that looks like. So we're trying to create this hub where people can upload videos and good practices that are happening around our state so that you don't need to drive all the way to Washington County. For those of you who live up here, that's like down the street for you, right? Washington County to see great practices. So just the other day, I hosted 7 people from Washington County and they came all the way to Davis, which is fine. But if we have this hub, you can kind of see it without having to drive so far. And then if that's a good connection for you, then you would receive the proper training. I know that we're out of time, but I know that Jennifer said, you know, our charter directors need to know what's going on with family engagement. Before I leave, just by raise of hands, how many of you in this room have I worked with your schools in any form of evidence-based family engagement strategy? Okay, how many of you are continuing to do those? Okay, so can you just quickly share what you're doing at your school? What evidence-based strategy?
We do the home visits every year.
Okay, and just tell us quickly about your community. What's the population of your school?
So we're rural, Title I school, and predominantly white, but there is a Hispanic population
Right,
too.
and a large displaced
LDS
polygamous community, which is really huge. That's a community that's not like, hey, I trust everybody, come to my house, but they've had really great results with that, right? So just recognizing these kinds of things are happening from K to 12, all different kinds of communities. Last couple slides are
It's just question answer. Yeah, it's just
no,
gonna
it's
say.
our contact.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Marie will share the
Yeah.
strategies and everything. We actually have a little pamphlet that
Yeah,
that
so
she'll send to
we'll
you.
send it as a PDF, but essentially instead of saying like, is this a great strategy for my school? We're hoping that schools are like, does it, is there welcoming and valuing with this strategy? Is there reciprocal learning? And is there impact? If it meets those 3 things, then yes, it would be a really strong strategy of family engagement for your school. So you'll be able to have these as a PDF to work in your schools. I hope that we will continue to be able to partner. And those of you who have any questions, here are our contact information. So thank you.
All right, next we do have Shonda Moss, and she's here from Teaching and Learning to talk about the alternative pathway to licensure. I'll get your slides all queued up for you.
Awesome. This is Kathy Webb, and she and I together are heading the committee and work group that's working with the alternate pathway to licensure. So as soon as we get our stuff, we'll be able to get it rolling. To kind of set some context for you, I came in a couple months ago and kind of introduced the new alternate pathway to licensure. What we'd like to do now is go into it a little bit further so that if you are looking at applying to become a program, an approved alternate pathway program, you know what that process is and what that will entail, because it's a process, and it will involve applying to become an approved program, proposing what it is that you will do for your pathway, and going from there. So when we're looking at the alternate pathway to professional licensure, to professional educator licensure, We start with Board Rule 301. R277301 Educator Licensing says that the requirements for a professional educator license include the completion and recommendation of a board-approved preparation program. So if you want to hire someone that does not have a professional license, your options used to be many, now will be very few. You're looking at an LEA specific, or you are looking at an associate educator license. So as Board Rule 301 states, you have to be an approved program in order to move them into professional licensure. Board Rule 303 defines educator preparation program as a comprehensive program administered by an entity that is intended to prepare individuals to meet the requirements for a Utah professional license or license area of concentration. So you would become an LEA preparation program. Kathy's gonna go over, as a reminder, we've had a lot of questions coming into our office about how does someone become an associate educator licensed person.
So assuming you need to hire a teacher, the teacher may come to you with an associate's license. And then if you're an approved program, you can then take them from the associate's license to the professional license. So the question to ask is how and what is an associate's license? So an associate's license is somebody who already has a degree, doesn't have to be an education degree, or they have certifications in a CTE area. For example, they're a welder, and they have the certifications to prove they have that competency. They've gone into the utah.gov/teachers and passed their state, the FBI fingerprint background check. Then they've taken a test or had a degree that's in the area of the endorsement area they want to teach in. That's a mouthful, so let me break that down for you. So if somebody comes to you who has an English degree and they want to be an English teacher, because their degree is in English, they don't have to take the content test. But if they have a degree in Utah Studies and they want to be an English teacher, they have to pass the English content test. So that will give us the baseline for the competency that they need to be an English teacher as far as the content itself. Then, so they either got it by degree, by the competency like the welder certificate, or they pass the test. Then they have to take 4 modules, and they are 2-hour modules each, and they're just like the minimum amount that somebody, before they show up to teach in a classroom, they need to know these things. They're the ethics, special ed, Utah effective teaching standards, and then classroom management instruction. Once the person has done all of those steps, then the state gives them the associate's license. So that's between the person who has the degree that wants to be a teacher and the state. Then they can come to you with that associate's license, and you can then choose whether or not that you're going to hire them. And so once they have that educator license, associate license in hand, they are qualified to enter into your educator preparation program.
If we have someone on a current LEA specific, which is now gonna go away.
Correct.
And we put them on the new version of the LEA specific, is the process the same?
So,
yes and no. You get to submit your own plan for an LEA specific, but we're gonna go through what's required to become a professional educator.
Okay.
The same rules apply.
So if somebody does currently have an LEA specific, they could apply for the associate license. And if they could meet those requirements, great. Then you can get them on the path to professional license. If they are not yet able to do the associates, they could go on the new LEA specific license with the intention that they can't stay there. that they would then need to get to the associate level, apply for that to the state, and then you could put them on to the pathway to professional licensure.
And you could actually even go straight from LEA specific to professional if you're able to verify they've completed everything. The other thing, yeah.
Along those same lines that say that an LEA-specific licensed teacher has been there for 5-6 years or whatever, they would pretty much know the content of these modules. They still have to take the modules that are online in order to get this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's
Only 2 hours for them.
right, and that's through the USBE website. That's where they'll access that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the associate educator license application will be available after March 1st. Now, you may interview someone that doesn't have an associate educator license or be interested in hiring someone. That's fine, right? Like, we are telling educators that does not stop you from applying for jobs and for interviewing. It might mean that your contract has the stipulation or contingency that you get the associate license or such. That's what we're telling educators, that you can either go in with that associate license or you can be in the mind that I'm going to do this should I get this job or whatever. They do need to have a license in hand before they start teaching. That includes first day of school or mid-year hire. That this has to be done before they can get into your classroom if they're going to get an associate license.
Just to clarify, this is the way it's going forward, correct? But for someone this is their last year as an ARL.
Yes. You are correct. If you have a current APT or ARL that's already on a plan, they just finish it up and then go through. So
And they go directly to professional license when they finish.
So you're right. This is moving forward. Finish them up if you've got them.
So let me go back to that as well. So the content test would also be available through the USB website.
Yeah, the content test is the praxis. It's
Oh,
the same
so it's
test
practice.
list that you're used to seeing.
Okay.
Yeah. So the content is still the same, the test list.
I knew that this new rule is gonna be effective July 1st onwards, but you are saying applications are gonna be out on March 1st, so how does that timeline?
So that means between March 1st and July 1st, anyone who applies for an associate educator license, when all of the process is done of reviewing it, then they will receive a letter that says you qualify for this. They can't actually get the license until July 1st. But
How about
but they will have evidence that they've completed
How
it
about
and
the
approved.
old system is still in place? If someone like within the old system applies now till July 1st, they'll go through the same old system, right? The current system.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Like the current system is still in effect till July 1st.
Yes.
And if someone applies now before July 1st with the current system, they wanna go for current system, not like for this new model. Will they have that option or not?
The APT and the ARL are not accepting applications.
That ended November 1st.
So this is
Even
the
normal,
current option.
normal out of state, let's say someone is applying out of state.
Out of state is an entirely different thing because an out of state applicant will apply, and if they're approved, they will get a professional license. So they don't even have to worry about this associate. So that process won't change, out of state and international. The only way that would affect them is if for whatever reason they aren't approved for a professional license, we could put them on an associate to do whatever it is that's missing in order for them to get a professional. But out of state, the idea is that they come in, they apply, they get professional licensure.
So we've already done 10 minutes. How much time do we have?
About half an hour.
Okay.
About, 15, 20 more minutes.
So in terms of the program that you are becoming, we're looking at Board Rule R277304 now. And the teacher preparation, so this is where we start to get into the nitty-gritty. When you're applying to become an alternate pathway program, you have to prepare teachers to meet Utah Effective Teaching Standards teach core standards and essential elements, demonstrate educator competencies, and prepare them to demonstrate clinical experience competencies.
Easy, right?
We'll go into more of what that looks like here in just a second. You also need to consider your candidates, your hire educators, what their dispositions and suitability is for teaching, and a plan for remediation and exit counseling if necessary. Now that may be something that you haven't had to worry about as an LEA before. If you don't renew someone's contract, If you're the educator preparation program and you're working with that educator, you've got to work in remediation with them and, if necessary, counsel them out of the program. Let's go into this idea of this alternate pathway. Now, remember, this is for elementary, secondary, and CTE candidates only. So all of the other student services, special education, all of those things cannot be moved from an associate to a professional in your pathway. They have to go through a university program. You have two choices to apply and propose to become an approved program. The first is a custom proposal, something that you have decided this is how we want to do it, and you'll propose it that way. Or you can take advantage of the USBE Model Program Framework, which gives you the framework for that program, and you commit to following it and fulfilling what the Model Program Framework is.
All right, so let's say you're approved. So your custom program meets all of the board 301, 303, 304, and it gets approved. Or you do the model program, you've got everything in place to do it. Now, the very first thing you have to do within 30 days of when you hire, within 30 days, you have to give them a professional license plan that they will then know the steps they have to go through to end up with a professional license. And the professional license plan has several components. One is the clinical experience, competencies, and mentor support. Now, the mentor support is a lot like you're already required to provide mentor support for new teachers. And so it's very similar to that. The clinical experiences are a little bit more than what you're used to doing. So with somebody who comes out of a university program, they've already gone into classrooms, they've done student teaching, they've done intern type things, and so they don't need as much support in seeing excellent teaching. These people who have never been through an educator preparation program need to see excellent teachers. Then they also need to have a mentor that is an excellent teacher to help build their capacity as a teacher. Do you want to do the pedagogical studies?
Yeah, so as you know, those of you who've done ARL or APT candidates before, you know that because they've never gone through an education preparation program, these people don't have the pedagogical background that someone coming out of a university program has. So there will be pedagogical studies that need to take place. You will have the opportunity to craft your own and submit syllabi or course descriptions and outlines. You have the opportunity to partner with universities, and so that they will offer through continuing education or a master's program or such, the kinds of courses that will lead to your candidate meeting the educator competencies listed in the board rule. Because that's what it boils down to. They've got to be able to complete and demonstrate their competency. These courses are the way to get them there. You will have the option to partner, to do it yourself, to offer or encourage them to go to a master's program or such.
So I get to talk about content studies. So remember, the associate's level person has only met the minimum competency by passing the Praxis English test, for example. But they may have big gaps in when they did their English degree. They were focusing on, some early kind of thing, and all of their English classes are having to do with, classical literature and have nothing to do with all the other things that an English teacher needs to know how to do. So the content studies is when you look at the transcript and you see, looks like they're missing adolescent literature. Looks like they don't really have a background in how to teach writing. They don't have a methods class of how to teach secondary language arts. So when you identify those gaps they have in their content expertise, not minimum competency, but their expertise to become a professional, you would then tell them these are the kinds of content studies you need to have to really become a professional teacher. And they meet the endorsement forms that we have right now.
The fourth thing that we've got up here is the pedagogical performance assessment. Now, this assessment, I shouldn't call it an exam, it's so much more than an exam. This assessment replaces the PLT praxis. And so this pedagogical performance assessment takes a teacher all the way through an entire cycle of teaching, through contextual factors, designing and implementing curriculum, teaching the curriculum, assessing the curriculum, reflecting on the curriculum. It's typically at the universities, they do it over the course of an entire semester. Some are able to stretch it out over 2 semesters, so over an entire year. It's big, it's huge. That's going to be a major factor. Anyone getting a professional license has to successfully pass the pedagogical performance assessment, no matter what education program they're coming from, whether it's a university or an LEA alternate pathway. Also meeting Utah effective teaching standards, so there will be some observation, administration involved in coming in and evaluating to ensure that they can meet and demonstrate competency in the UETs, and making sure that their teachers understand what those standards are.
For university credit, they have like so many hours that they have to fulfill in terms of those pedagogical classes and whatnot, curriculum development. I am assuming that the USB model program would have something similar to that for them to get that. And so if the LEA or if the school decided to implement their own custom proposal, they would then have to show how they are satisfying those requirements.
Exactly.
In terms of depth of knowledge and
Yep, exactly.
Right, and then the last thing to talk about, there was one other thing on that, was that they have to have an administrator come into their classroom and actually do the evaluation to see how they're doing with the Utah effective teaching standards and disposition, that kind of stuff. So all the rules that you have in place right now with peer to be able to evaluate your teachers. Of course, charter schools can do some other kinds of things, but in this program, you will have to have an administrator doing an evaluation of these new teachers to make sure they're meeting the required growth from an associate to a truly professional teacher.
So this next slide just goes over an overview of what's going to be expected for clinical experiences. Now, realizing for you, your educator that you hire, your candidate, is in the classroom. So it's not like a university that's making arrangements with the school to send them there and things, but it's you working with them, but you still have to meet the board rule requirements, which means you might have to provide a substitute for them to be able to get into other classrooms or to get to a neighboring school or to go visit other master teachers at different levels of your school, different grade levels, so that they can work with all types, so that they can progressively grow more complex and more significant as described here. This is all in the board rule. You're welcome to look at. This has a lot of writing on it that you can, we're not going to read and things. We just want to demonstrate for you. When we're talking about clinical experience competencies, we told you there was a lot of things to cover. this text, I'm sorry for the formatting, for some reason it translated
Those aren't strikeouts.
not in between the lines. I don't know why, but that's okay. But these are the competencies that your candidates will have to demonstrate and you will have to sign off on before they can be recommended for a license, professional license. So as you review this and as you go back and your Friday evening reading with board rule, you're able to see, I've got to make sure that my educators, I'm giving them the opportunities to demonstrate these after they've learned them. Same thing goes with the educator competencies. What knowledge and skills do they need to demonstrate as just a good teacher? Big old list here. We've already talked here about the content studies. Methods of teaching in that content area is part of that. So you could make the argument that it's a pedagogical study because it's a methods of teaching, but it's also part of the content. So it kind of double dips into both areas there. We've already talked about Utah Effective Teaching Standards in terms of this is where they get to really show they know how to be a good teacher and that they have the disposition to be a good teacher. So helping them understand what those dispositions are, going over their teacher artifacts will help prepare them for a pedagogical performance assessment. Doing those formal evaluations will help prepare them for the final UETS evaluation and recommendation.
I was going to say, and the other thing, the pedagogical studies that they do will also prepare them for that.
Absolutely. In terms of the pedagogical performance assessment that we've already talked about, you may want to note there's 2 approved tests so far that have been submitted to the state. One of them is Educational Testing Services PPAT, the Praxis Performance Assessment for Teachers. The other is Pearson Education's EdTPA, the Educator Teaching Performance Assessment. We've had people ask, can we create our own? We say, yes, you can. There are certain standards that have to be met, and you have to be able to supply reliability and validity data to demonstrate that your test is valid and reliable. These 2 have done that. They're approved so far. Once someone has completed their personalized professional license plan, then you can recommend them for a license to the state. Where the associate educator license happens directly between the educator and the state, the professional license is a recommendation. After determining they do meet all of the requirements and they've passed the pedagogical performance assessment, they've met all of the competencies, the administrator says, yes, they know the UETs, we're good to go, you would then recommend them to us for the professional licensure.
So a significant change, just one second, a significant change with APT, they had to be teaching full-time for 3 years before they were finished, or if they're less than full-time, 4 years. With ARL, they had to be at least half-time each year in the area for which they were content eligible, and they had to have the equivalent of full-time teaching for a year. So the soonest somebody could get done with the ARL would be if they got all of their plan done, they still had to finish that year before they could be recommended. In this, you don't have that time constraint as far as somebody, if you hired somebody who had all the content expertise, who had already taken all the pedagogical, had already done their teaching methods class, the only thing you'd really have left to do would be the making sure the mentoring and they've met the clinical experiences stuff. And so they could get done.
And it can happen anytime.
I had a question back
throughout the
here.
year.
Yeah, somebody online was wondering where they can find an explanation.
On the front page of the State Board of Education licensing page, there's a paragraph and then there's a link to the PDF that gives the overview. And then March 1st, more information will be there. Yes, you can have these slides.
Last question and then we'll finish up.
So if we don't want to do an in-house, then USBE has an option for them, or we have to do an in-house?
We do not have an alternate pathway through the state.
University's their only option.
Universities, you can communicate with universities and they would be happy to have your student and put them through their program.
Their money.
The program application will be available after March 1st, and you'll be able to then apply to become an Apple. What is that? The acronym again?
Alternate
pathway
to professional educator licensing.
And we put up as a reminder what the requirements for that are. We realize this is a lot of work. It's what has been asked for. The state has been asked to stop doing it so that the local control could take care of it. So if that, I know. And so if you are looking to become an Apple program, March 1st is when things are available. We're actually piloting things right now with some LEAs that are submitting applications in the next week or two here, and then we'll open it up to everyone after March 1st. Keep checking our website for updates, and I didn't think about putting our contact information up here. I apologize for that, but you can find us on the website, Shonda and Kathy. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, back to her point, so if I don't want to go through the Apple program, I would only hire professionally licensed staff?
Which you will have a hard time to find.
Absolutely, that's kind of why I'm like, so if I don't do this, then I can only do this.
So it's almost like market is shrinking, we are having very hard to find candidates, and it's getting almost so difficult to make them through this program.
Well, and how many of us were told to do a letter of authorization or an LEA specific, and now our current teachers won't have access to professional if we.
Yeah, and you can still utilize the letters of, not letters of authorization, the LEA specific, and get them into that pipeline to get them to professional licensure.
The first year, 2, 3 of LEA specific, get them ready and get them in associates. Then you have another 2 to 3 years to get them to professional.
So just a scenario, so if I have a guy who's run a bunch of businesses through the years, he wants to give back to the community, teach an entrepreneurship class, has no interest in starting a university program, he just wants to teach a couple classes. He's eminently qualified. What do we do with that person?
That's the perfect way to use an LEA specific license.
So that's still.
But that's only good for 2 years,
Yeah,
right?
those.
2 years at your level, and then it has to come in front of the state to approve. But that scenario you just described is the perfect scenario for an LEA specific.
So the state will extend an LEA
for the state to continue to
specific?
improve.
Or and the board, your local board approves it, then whatever timeline your board says, 1, 2, or 3 years, then it comes to the state board, and the state board would then have to approve it.
Okay.
But in a situation like that, that makes sense to put them on an LEA specific. If you have someone who's perfectly capable and is a full-time teacher, really should be on a professional license, that's where the state might go, wait, why are they still on an LEA specific? Why are you not working with them towards professional license?
Because they're 65 and it's just a hobby.
Right?
Or they're already a university professor.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why that would be a perfect example of how to use that LEA specific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll plan to have them come back in a month or two. It seems like we've got a lot of questions on this, and that is some important changes coming down the pipeline. Marie? Yes, ma'am.
Can we have access to these slides?
Yep, these always go into the director's drive. After the meeting? After the meeting, yes.
So that's how it works.
Did anyone catch when that Apple program approval was?
March 1st.
March
First
1st.
application.
March 1st for that one.
I'm going through the wrong way. All right, we do have one more presentation today. This is for those that have CTE programs, so we're looking 7th grade and up. So if you are just running a K6, you're off early for the day. So if you have 7th and above, please plan to stay with us. We have Jonathan Frey here. He is the USPE CTE coordinator, and he will be talking about the CTE pathways and application process.
All right, good afternoon. So yeah, I am the one of the CTE coordinators here at the State Office of Education. So one of my main duties is the state pathways. And to give you kind of a background with the pathway system, is we just went through a reauthorization at the federal level, which is forcing us at our level to make changes. And so that's part of what I wanted to bring before you, are the changes that we're making in pathways. Now I know that not every one of you are an approved CTE program, and that's okay. Part of what I want to give you today is, one, to understand the pathway system, but also if it's something that you're already doing in your school, probably should apply and then be able to receive some of that funding as well into your schools. And so that's part of what this is again, help you understand the changes we're making, but also if you're not already doing it and if you're already teaching the courses in your school and not receiving the funding, please apply. Because that's what the funding's for, is to support your CTE classes. So real quick, just a kind of a background again, this data here is something we see consistent right now coming out of industry. And again, that's what we're catering to with our CTE courses, is our industry partners want our students that have skills. It's nice that they graduate from high school. That's what they want as a high school graduate. They want potentially even a college graduate, but really they're saying we want, when they're looking at a hiring person, they want somebody who has skills. And a lot of the time, especially in our IT field, they're saying, well, if you bring them to us and they've got the skills, we'll hire them and then we'll actually pay for the schooling so they can continue on. And so, although we're hearing this more and more out of industry, where again, they will hire kids out of high school if they can prove they have skills, and then they will help them progress if the college education is necessary, which again, we know that for most industries, that's the case. Now, just to kind of give you background on the pathways, how they're created, they must have at least one of the following. You have to be a high-wage, high-skill, or a high-demand job here in Utah. We work with the Department of Workforce Services, and they give us a list of these are the jobs here in this state that fall under these qualifying identities. And so as we're looking at pathways, we don't have pathways for everything. If a student wants to go into theater tech, yes, that is an industry. They can do that here in Utah. There's just not a high demand, nor is it a high wage. And so we're not going to have a pathway that's going to be specified for something like that. So a student could go through and take the courses and get there. It just isn't under the CTE realm. The big thing with these courses again is to give the student an academic and a technical opportunity, and it's rigorous at a high level. And so we're looking at the high quality, and so if you're looking at our strands and standards with those courses, again, that's the goal that we're trying to create. And to teach them all these workplace skills so that when, again, they graduate, they go through it, all these things, they can go to an employer and say, I have this skill set, I can work in your field, I can a team player and all that goes with it. And the big thing, again, our goal is to get our students graduated. Again, when they come into a lot of the CTE courses, it's a field that they're really interested in. That might be the only thing that they're coming to school for. And so, again, giving them that, something to keep them there at school. Also, again, prepare for the future. Again, when we were in high school, did you really think about what you want to be when you grow up? I sure did. And so, again, trying to give that opportunity for them. As well, it's a very critical age of exploration. Again, if I go back to my high school experience, I wish I could go back and redo most of it, because when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I was going to be, and it took me several years of college and a whole lot of cost on my side to figure it out. That's, again, part of what we were trying to do with CTE is open that door, let them explore when the cost is really low, and they hopefully will catch on to something they really like and be able to move on. Currently, for this year, we have 58 pathways. And that is small. Again, you will have this, so you can look at it closer. And so you can see how we're going with that. We are changing that going forward. The charts themselves with more information, but this is the bulk of it. So currently, as if you're in the CT world, where we're looking at concentrators, which is, or concentrators, which means they've done 1.5 credits, with one of them being a foundation, and then 1.5 credits in the entire pathway. To be a completer is 3 credits worth, or really 3 years worth of CTE courses within that pathway. So that's the current year. That ends at the end of this year. We're going to go down to 34 pathways. When we're looking at it, there's a whole lot of duplication in the pathways that are in those 58. And so for me, I was sitting at a high school graduation awards assembly last year when my son was graduating, and they were bringing up students who had 2, 3 pathway completions. And I'm thinking in my mind, because this is my world of how in the world are they getting these multiple pathways completions? Really, are they focusing intentionally into an area? And that's part of where I came back and went, are we doing pathways intentionally? And that's part of what the shift is with the change, as well as with the Perkins 5 law passing, they changed the definition of a concentrator. Instead of that concentrator being 1.5 credits, it says 2 courses. And that's all the direction they give us. They let us at the state level define it. And so we've gone through and within committees here, we've defined it that it makes sense. So here's our new pathways. So this is the entire chart that you would see. We've designed it initially for the 7th grade level. Again, with the college and career awareness course that our 7th graders are taking, this is where we want to make sure that if we hand it to them, they could understand it. And then from there on, they can take it with them and be able to understand that way. Our goal is to create more flexibility. Now, those of you that are already doing some CTs, it doesn't give you as much flexibility in some areas, and others it'll give you more. Again, going forward, we're hoping that it does. The big thing is we're not making changes. We're locking these for 4 years. We reauthorize our state plan in 4 years, so we're going to hold tight on the pathways. In previous years, you'll see a change every single year with the pathways. And so we really are trying to slow that process down, again, making these more intentional. So in looking at the pathway itself, part of what we're looking at is we're tying it from that 7th grade level all the way to post-secondary, so that when your students see these in 7th grade, they can now see a pathway of where they can go all the way through post-secondary. Now they can make a good decision, hopefully somewhere along the line, to say, hey, this is where I'm going, and then here's where I can go to get a job or to go into a post-secondary major. Please.
Are you envisioning that they'll, with their counselor, that they will in 7th grade, you know what I'm saying, or within their CCA class, that they'll put together some kind of a plan? Like, what is the intention? Because that's really cool, sure. And I'd love to see that happen more. I'm just trying to make sure.
The answer is both.
Okay.
It's a conversation, really, because of the way the CCA course is designed. Your counselor should be working with your teachers. Great. It should be a consistent conversation. And really, our 7th grade teachers are being taught, and the PD they're given in the summer is really centered around this of how can you more intentionally give these to students. Good question. We're adding more of these supporting courses. Now, a lot of these look at this and say, well, duh, they're going to take secondary math too. What we're trying to do is give it more validity. You want to be in this career, maybe you want to take this course a little more serious. And so it's more intentional for the students to be more serious about what their education is outside of just their CTE courses. Do I really want to, if I want to be in this career, here's a few more courses I really should consider. Up to this point, so before the Explorer courses, these are all just support to the pathway. Right here at the Explorer level is really where the pathway begins. Now these Explorer courses are designed for 9th and 10th grade exploring. That's usually what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing just yet. That's really what the design is for them to look at that. Now, can a 10th or 11th and 12th grade student take this? Of course. So it's really designed to get them in early, but if it's a late bloomer, why not? Get them in there. We do have the concurrent enrollment courses signified with an asterisk, as well as the recommended courses. So as you're designing your programs within your schools, if that's what something you want to be doing, those are some of the things maybe you look at is here's some post-secondary opportunity to grant them, as well as maybe a sequence of events or sequence of courses, which are the ones you really intentionally want to have in your school. Here's the CTE concentrator. All the pathways are pretty much designed around this course. These are unique to each pathway. So all 34 pathways have unique concentrating courses. So as you're designing, maybe planning forward, you want to implement more pathways, this is the course you want to design first and then build around it. And that's how going forward is you're going to see this is going to be consistent. Depending on the pathway, there are some that have multiple concentrators. It depends on the pathway. The big thing here is to be a concentrator, you have to complete one of these courses that will be on the concentrating level plus one more. That's our definition of two courses. And so going forward in your reporting for those that are qualified, again, to be a concentrator, you have to do that one course plus one more in the pathway. Doesn't matter which one it is.
Pathway can be explorer or concentrator, but not completer, right?
It could be a completer as well.
Of the two classes that would count.
Yeah, it's just going to be wide open. The concentrator is the one that's going to define it. So that's the easy way to do that. Then we are sticking still to the 3 credits to be a completer. And again, right now, even though we have specified completer courses, right now, it's not required that you have to get to that level. In 4 years from now, I anticipate that it will be required. So as you're planning going forward, looking at that, to be a completer, you're going to want to build in those courses to go forward. But again, we want to give you plenty of time to be able to build that in and plan ahead. And again, we'll give plenty of forward advance notice before we'll actually say this is required. In 4 years, you might say we're not ready yet. The anticipation, again, is that we're getting kids through the progress so that when they take this completer course, which is the most advanced course, if they complete that, potentially go into an internship, the next step naturally will go into a post-secondary course, a UTech course. It will move them naturally into a career opportunity. And so that's really what we're aiming for. And again, the definition for that's up there. To be a completer, you must pass enough to earn those 3 credits.
Are there still designation of half year, full year, or how are the credits?
The credits are specified with what's recorded in Cactus.
Okay.
So if most of our courses are semester courses, that doesn't mean that you can't teach it for a year. It'll pull up, when we look at it, it'll pull up as a half-year course and the students duplicated into the second year, so the duplication doesn't count. Great question. The last part of this is, again, the connection to the post-secondary. These 3 websites here are actually really, really good in the sense of introducing our students to options in that post-secondary realm. Of course, you got the USHE website into our colleges and universities. You've got the UTechs into the tech centers that are locally. We've got 8 of those throughout the state. And then this Utah Majors, in all honesty, I would put every 7th grade in this one and say play. That where you can go and you can actually say, I want to be this when I grow up. It'll show which universities actually offer that course, anything that'll to do with that whatever they put in. And so they can actually see, where should I go to college? And the big thing on this, when I say I'm a BYU grad, do I want my kids to go to BYU? I really don't care. I want them to go to the place that's going to best help them move on in their career opportunities. And that's the goal of that website right there. So again, getting those in those hands of the students so they can get in that early, see it often so they can make those plans. Let's go back real quick. Any last questions on the actual pathway itself? Yes.
I just know a couple of the classes that are still on the new pathways, medical math, business and personal finance. Like when we talk to the specialists, it's like, well, they may be around, they may not. I mean, what is your take on putting these out? Can we assume that the classes on there are going to be moving forward, or is there work being done with those to get people certified?
If a course is on there, it's going to stay for at least 4 years. We may add courses on there, additional courses. I know like the aviation pathway, we're building that out right now. So there's courses that we have in mind if we're going to build. but nobody's teaching them yet, so we're still in the process of defining them. So unless there's a course on here that really there's nobody taking this course and it doesn't make sense, you might see a drop, but I highly doubt it. So things like medical math, I know right now we're actually in the process of creating a cohort to actually get people certified to do it. So we'll get more of that. So again, that's part of the conversations with the specialists, that they design these courses for things that we're going to keep. So any other good questions on this? Okay, just kind of real quick recap on the funding. This is really the basics of the law right here in a visual. The WPU, to receive the 10 WPU, add on additional money to support your courses. This is the requirements, which is 1 student organization. You have to have 2 areas of study. That is going to be changed to 2 cluster areas, because we've switched from programs studies to clusters, and there's more of those. A minimum of 6 courses, and then 1 pathway. That's to qualify you to receive those funds. So if you're doing that now, not receiving those funds, you need to have a conversation with myself so we can get you in the process and get you moving. And then you can build your programs again to receive more additional funds by doing more CTE, if that makes sense within your charter. So with the application, the link's right there. If you are doing that and it's something you want to do to receive the funding, the link again right here, you can click on that. I'll take you right to the actual link and the application. And of course, you can contact me if you have questions on that. If you've got a 7th grade course, again, the CCA course is required. You should be teaching this. There is funding that supports it. And so if you are doing that, not receiving that funding, you're going to contact Ashley Higgs, and there's her contact information. Again, there is an application you will receive. You'll have to fill out. And then again, you'll receive the funding next year for that. And so those are the 2 main ones that we support. So again, if you are doing that, not receiving the funding, we want you to receive the funding. So please apply if that falls into that.
And the CTE internship will be funded as a class, like a regular CTE class?
Yep, so we did make changes with the work-based learning. That is there's 2 different funds. One goes under Perkins and one goes under state funds. In the past, charges did not qualify for Perkins unless they were very large, like we're looking like ALA size, where they've got a K-12, almost small school district. They didn't qualify. Those are starting to change. We also have changed with your regions. So there's 8 different regions within the state. If you're not part of that, definitely get involved. As if you're a qualified CTE program, you should be going to those meetings or have a representative going to the meetings. Within those regions, we have 6 of our 8 regions have joined in a consortium. And because they've joined in a consortium, charters now qualify for that Perkins funding. It's not going to be a whole lot, but you do qualify for their services that now will be offered within those regions. And so, again, another funnel, and not a whole lot of funds will go your way because your schools are obviously smaller than like an Alpine, but again, another opportunity. Another way. Thank you. Else I can answer for you. Summer conference? I'm going to say 2nd week of June. I know it's on our website for most of them, depending on the area, but I think that's the 2nd week is where most of those are going to be at. And when you look up again, we have a lot of different areas for the summer conferences if your teachers haven't gone to them, especially if you have the 7th grade CCA course. Again, looking for that. I think we're going to Mountain Ridge High School. I think is where it's going to be at. The majority of it this year. Any other questions that I can help you with pathways or CTE? Okay. And again, as you guys get back into your office and you say, oh, there's a thought, please email me. My contact is on here, is on the next slide. And I understand your world. I was an assistant principal in the charter, so I understand what you guys are doing. And so as you do have questions, please send them my way and say, hey, we would love to build a CTE program in our school. We're not sure how. have a conversation with me, because either one, we can help you get there, or we can say, okay, let's plan ahead so you can start building it into your school. And it'll be doing better for what our kids need. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That wraps up director's meeting today. Again, our next meeting is Monday, March 9th. Have a good and safe afternoon. If you need a drink or a bowl of meatballs or something for your ride home, please help yourself on the way out. Bye.
Okay, Tyler, did you understand this all going down the line? That the state would start providing an option for professionals?
You're talking about licensure, right?